So, tariffs are essential tools in international trade, shaping the way countries interact and do business with one another. Basically, they're taxes imposed by a government on imported goods, and sometimes on exported goods as well, though imports are far more common. The primary purpose of tariffs is to protect domestic industries from foreign competition, giving local businesses a better chance to thrive. By making imported goods more expensive, tariffs encourage consumers to buy domestic products, which can help create jobs and support the local economy. They also generate revenue for the government, which is, pretty important, especially for funding public services and infrastructure. Historically, tariffs have been used to regulate trade and protect national interests, sometimes even shaping the course of entire economies. They can be specific, which is a fixed fee per unit, like charging a set amount for every ton of steel or barrel of oil that comes in. Or ad valorem, meaning a percentage of the product's value, so the more expensive the item, the higher the tariff paid. Tariffs can impact the prices of goods, affecting both consumers and businesses, sometimes making everyday items noticeably more expensive. When tariffs are high, imported goods become costly, potentially leading to inflation and putting pressure on household budgets. In recent years, tariffs have become a political tool, used in debates and campaigns to address economic concerns and national priorities. Governments use them to exert pressure on other countries during trade negotiations, hoping to secure better deals or concessions. By imposing tariffs, a country can address trade imbalances, aiming to reduce the gap between what it imports and exports, or retaliate against unfair practices, such as dumping or subsidies, that put their own industries at a disadvantage. However, tariffs can also lead to trade wars, where countries impose tariffs on each other, disrupting global trade and creating uncertainty for businesses and consumers alike. In 2025, former President Donald Trump made headlines once again by introducing a sweeping series of tariffs that would reshape the landscape of global trade. These new tariffs were broad in scope, targeting imports from nearly every major trading partner of the United States, and sending shockwaves through international markets. The administration claimed the tariffs would help address long-standing trade deficits, protect American industries from foreign competition, and revitalize domestic manufacturing jobs that had been lost over the years. These measures were part of a broader, more aggressive strategy to renegotiate existing trade deals and assert U.S. economic power on the world stage, signaling a new era in American trade policy. The tariffs were rolled out in two distinct waves, first in February and then again in April of 2025, each time drawing intense media coverage and public debate. Ranging from 10% to as high as 50%, these tariffs affected a wide array of goods, from electronics and textiles to everyday consumer products, impacting both businesses and shoppers. Countries like Canada, China, and Mexico were specifically targeted, reflecting ongoing tensions and disputes with these key trading partners. The administration justified these sweeping tariffs by declaring a national emergency under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, granting the president broad authority to act in the face of perceived threats. Unlike the tariffs imposed during Trump's first term, these new measures were more expansive and not limited to specific industries or products. They were not related to steel, aluminum, or auto imports, which had been the focus of earlier trade actions. Instead, these tariffs were designed to address broader economic issues, including the flow of illicit substances, ongoing geopolitical tensions, and concerns about national security. While the tariffs generated significant revenue for the government, they also sparked widespread controversy, ignited protests, and led to a series of legal challenges that would test the limits of presidential power in trade policy. The imposition of these tariffs led to a significant legal battle, one that would test the very foundations of American governance and the separation of powers. At the heart of the issue was the balance of power between Congress and the president, a tension that has shaped U.S. history for centuries. The U.S. Constitution grants Congress the power to regulate trade and impose tariffs, reflecting the framers' intent to keep economic authority in legislative hands. However, the president has the authority to act in emergencies, as outlined in the IEEPA, allowing swift action when national security is at stake. Several businesses and states challenged the legality of the tariffs, arguing that their livelihoods and local economies were being threatened. They argued that the president had overstepped his authority, bypassing the checks and balances designed to prevent unilateral action. The lawsuits claimed that the IEEPA did not explicitly grant the power to impose such sweeping tariffs, especially in situations not directly tied to a clear emergency. The challengers contended that these import taxes were causing severe economic harm, leading to factory closures, job losses, and higher prices for consumers across the nation. The legal conflict raised questions about executive power, congressional oversight, and the proper limits of emergency authority in a democracy. Lower courts initially ruled against the tariffs, stating that they were illegal and exceeded the president's statutory authority. However, the tariffs remained in place pending a Supreme Court review, keeping the nation in suspense as the highest court prepared to weigh in. This case became a pivotal moment in examining the limits of presidential authority in economic matters, setting a precedent for how far executive power can reach in times of crisis. The Trump administration defended its actions vigorously. Solicitor General D. John Sauer argued that the IEEPA provided broad powers to the president. The administration claimed that the tariffs were necessary to protect national security. They warned that removing the tariffs could lead to economic instability. The administration also highlighted the geopolitical context. They argued that the tariffs were part of efforts to combat the flow of fentanyl and address tensions with Russia. The government believed that the tariffs were essential for ongoing trade negotiations and maintaining U.S. economic leverage. On the other side, businesses and states painted a dire picture. They argued that the tariffs were crippling small businesses and leading to bankruptcies. The challengers insisted that the president had exceeded his authority. They called for a return to constitutional norms, where Congress holds the power to levy tariffs. In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court ruled against the Trump administration. The court found that the president had overstepped his authority under the IEEPA. The justices emphasized that the power to impose tariffs resides with Congress. This decision really reaffirmed the constitutional balance of powers. The court's ruling was based on a strict interpretation of the IEEPA, and the justices noted that the act did not explicitly grant the president the power to impose such broad tariffs. They highlighted the importance of adhering to constitutional principles. The decision was seen as a victory for those advocating for checks and balances. The ruling had immediate implications. The tariffs were blocked, and the administration was required to halt their collection. The decision also set a precedent for future cases involving executive power. It underscored the limitations of presidential authority in economic matters, reinforcing Congress's role in trade regulation. The Supreme Court's decision had far-reaching consequences for global trade. The removal of the tariffs was welcomed by many of the United States' trading partners. Countries like Canada, China, and Mexico saw it as a step towards normalizing trade relations. The decision was expected to ease tensions and foster cooperation. For American businesses, the ruling provided relief. Many companies had struggled with the increased costs of imported goods. The tariffs had led to higher prices for consumers and disrupted supply chains. With the tariffs blocked, businesses anticipated a return to more stable economic conditions. However, the decision also posed challenges. The United States Treasury faced the prospect of refunding billions in collected tariffs. The ruling also raised questions about future trade policy. The decision highlighted the need for a coherent strategy that balances economic interests and national security. The Supreme Court's decision had significant implications for presidential power. It reaffirmed the role of Congress in regulating trade. The ruling underscored the importance of adhering to constitutional principles. It served as a reminder that the president's authority is not absolute, even in emergencies. The decision also had political ramifications. It challenged the notion of unilateral executive action in economic matters. The ruling was seen as a check on presidential power, reinforcing the need for collaboration with Congress. It highlighted the importance of legislative oversight in trade policy. For Congress, the decision was an opportunity to reassert its role. Lawmakers were encouraged to engage more actively in trade policy. The ruling prompted discussions about the need for legislative action to address trade imbalances and protect domestic industries. It emphasized the importance of a balanced approach to economic governance. For everyday Americans, the Supreme Court's decision had tangible effects. The removal of the tariffs was expected to lower prices for many consumer goods. This was particularly important in an economic climate marked by inflationary pressures. The decision was seen as a win for consumers seeking affordable products. The ruling also had implications for employment and business growth. With tariffs lifted, businesses anticipated increased opportunities for expansion. The decision was expected to boost economic activity and create jobs. It highlighted the interconnectedness of trade policy and domestic economic well-being. However, the decision also raised questions about future trade policy. It underscored the need for a balanced approach that considers both economic and security concerns. The ruling was a reminder of the complexities of global trade and the importance of thoughtful governance in shaping economic outcomes.